Hey, welcome to The Present Is. I'm in a new surrounding today, and I really enjoy this. I want to thank my wonderful friend Ambrosia Tuft for allowing me to use the Women Unfiltered studio. And today, I would really like to introduce you to a really good friend of mine, someone that I've known for many, many years, basically my whole life. It's been awesome to know this person. Victoria Repka-Geller is my special guest today. And Victoria, you offer a program that is a passion of yours that you've been working on for a long period of time, and it's been like a lifelong journey for you to create something to let people know that they're not alone in the universe, especially from the women's perspective, and bring out an opportunity to say you can be the powerful person you need to be, but also be yourself.
Yes.
And you call it LOAMlife, right?
Yes.
Explain, and I know that I'm probably not explaining it exactly the way that you know how to do it, but please, that's why you're here.
Yeah.
So let us know about LOAMlife and how did you start it in the first place? What was the reason why you started it?
Well, it has been ongoing probably my whole life, but really about 4 or 5 years ago, I got put on probation at work, and it just didn't make sense. I'd started off in New York as an assistant account executive, worked my way up, and I'd just been really on this roller coaster in my career in corporate America. One time you're up, then you're down, really depending on like who you're working with, how you're projecting yourself, all those different incidences. And as I said, about 4 or 5 years ago, I got put on probation when I was working at a company, and it just didn't make sense to me. I'm like, I'm working so hard. I'm like giving up all this like liberty. I know I'm doing a good job. I'm getting feedback. They just felt it wasn't a good fit. And it really hit me hard because I'm very, very career focused, maybe borderlining sometimes on workaholic, but really have taken a lot of pride in my career. I moved out of New York in 1999 out of grad school, and just kind of took off. And I had hired my own coach because I wasn't sure what was really going on. I felt maybe it was because I was a woman or it wasn't, but I've never really felt kept back because I was a woman. I mean, I've always moved forward, but I really didn't know how to solve it. So as I said, I hired my own coach. She came in and just observed. And I actually, the biggest step that I took was being vulnerable and visible and transparent with my company. I was like, you're going to put me on probation. That could mean many different things at that point. And my instinct is always to just try to solve things. That's what I've always done. In this instance, I was like, I'm just going to kind of take a step back and not try to like fix it. That's like one of my board of directors, and I have an internal board of directors, and I can explain that a little bit later, but is like, fix it, Victoria. Anything I can fix. And I'm like, this one, maybe what you've been doing your entire life, you just kind of need to take a step back. Anyway, she came in. She observed me in one of these, a meeting that I was conducting, and it just went awful. People left, and I really took it very personally, like I had done something wrong. And she sat me down afterwards, and again, I was being very transparent. I told my company that was hiring an executive coach that I wasn't going to go down without swinging, and I knew I had something to own in this, and that I would work on it. And she said to me, it was the most surprising twist was I was sure she was going to give me feedback on, well, you could have done this, you could have done that. And she had me explain what went on, and she actually interviewed other people, and she's like, do you think anyone else could have run that meeting better?
Okay.
And it just stopped me for a second, because I can fix anything.
Right.
And I thought about it, I'm like, well, if I put someone else in the shoes, well, no, like the client was upset, people were walking out in the middle of the meeting, no one really wanted to work together to really solve the problem, layers upon it. And I'm like, well, no one else could have solved it, no one else would have been handling that meeting was awful. She's like, so then why do you think you could have? Why are you putting so much pressure on yourself to fix something or solve something that you don't think anyone else could have? And it just stopped me really dead in my tracks. And I really had to look at what I owned in that instance. And I ended up being there 2 years later, working on multi-million-dollar projects, and just really realized that I needed to do something completely different. On top of that, like I never do anything, I can't swear on this show.
You sure can. Yeah.
I never do anything half-assed, so I was like,
that's fine.
I'm gonna
make a complete ass of
yeah, exactly.
make a complete ass out of yourself. Yeah.
Well, no, I don't do that, but I was not gonna do anything half-assed. So I actually went to a couple of different programs to really figure out like what was happening with me. I had come across this book that basically the title says that what got you here can't get you where you want to go. Never read the book. I just read the title and was like, yeah, actually what got me here can't get me where I want to go. And that really hit me. I did School of Women in the Arts with Mama Gina's. I did Barbara Stanley, who actually I'm now in her book. I was then, after I went through all this process, I did Tony Robbins. I mean, I did it all within like 8 months. I was like, I am done. I'm going to figure this out and I'm going to change. Since then, and this is actually one of the first times I've announced this, I've actually gone from assistant account executive working on Madison Avenue, and I will now be starting at the end of April as a chief marketing officer.
Congratulations.
Yes. I'm also building my own coaching and a career strategy company. So that is something I'm doing on the side, and I really love bringing my marketing background with that. And I've learned to really not take things so personally and let people own their stuff. I own my stuff, and have now created a 5-step program, LOAMlife, that I can help people get to where they want to go in their career. Because part of me kind of feels like it's big, can you believe it? I started off as assistant account executive and somehow talked my way all the way up into chief marketing officer position. And part of me is like, no, based on like my skill set, my training, my strategy, my ability, and also the people I brought in my life to support that. It's just been this natural progression, and I work with men and women to do that.
I love how you took a breath before you said that, because you do deserve all this.
Yeah.
I mean, you did. You went through chaos. You went through anxiety. You went through a lot of different emotions. Depression. You realized for yourself that ownership happens in a lot of other areas. You are not in control of everyone else and what they're doing. You have control of what you're going to own. But from within you, you're able to make other people look at you differently, look at you with more power, with more opportunities, and you manifested.
Yeah.
Really, you did. You manifested an opportunity that was huge for you.
Yeah.
In a couple different ways. One for you personally, but also one for you professionally.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because there's a lot of literature on this, but in essence, in any kind of relationship or partnership, and working in corporate America is a partnership. I mean, the blinds, and I actually spoke about this at the National Institute of Mental Illness last year at end of year in Albany, that their personal and professional lines have so blurred, we really don't have those breaks.
Right.
And I do think that there is, and this is actually a mission in my life, I really do want to change corporate America, either by bringing people out of it and finding different possibilities, and or also infiltrating within.
Right.
And changing it that way. And you're already seeing it with a lot of the more avant-garde companies like Google and Facebook. But they come across saying they want to make life better, and I'm not going to dish on Google or Facebook. They come after me. But, our lives have just become so blurred professionally and personally. So I do think there is a component where corporations have to help the individual as well. And I personally have had that experience. But I don't know if I answered your first question about LOAMlife.
You did, but you know what? We're going to take a quick break from that, because this is wonderful. It's exactly where we need to be.
Because I love telling the story.
Yeah, exactly where we need to be. We realize where you were, where you dealt with the past. Now you're dealing with what you're dealing with now, moving forward with it. Yeah. LOAMlife's a huge part about it. And we're going to talk about it a little bit more right after this quick break. We'll be right back. With Victoria Repka-Geller, and what you've been able to do up until the point where you really decided LOAMlife was going to be the thing that you want to promote from a personal level is amazing, especially where you're able to receive now from it. The levels you've taken yourself is wonderful, especially in a male-dominated, what has been a male-dominated.
No, it's still male-dominated. I go into meetings and I look around, and that's actually been one thing that's probably kept me in corporate America a long time. I'll literally go into meetings, I'll look around, I'm like, I am literally one of the only women in this room. And I've taken on a real mantle of like wanting to be that woman that plows through. But what I've realized is that we need men and women. Which is so funny, because men, not necessarily the more powerful, just happen to be the ones that are recognized, for a long period of time. But it's not even male or female. It's a person. The person themselves is the one that actually has the power. They have the ability to create it. It has nothing to do with whether they're male or female. But some people do look at it like that. Well, I think there's two things in there. One, it definitely doesn't matter if you're male or female. There's definitely masculine and feminine energies, which both men and women exhibit. But our current situation, and there are definitely outliers, but mostly in corporate America, what you see is an old school way of management that really hasn't caught up.
Right.
And what you're starting to see is hopefully business schools, starting to change it. And what we're also seeing is that the millennials are coming in, and I love my millennials. There's some gross generalizations. Work ethic can transcend any age, but they've literally come into the workforce and said, no, I'm not going to do that. Which, I'm a Gen X, and Gen X, we were brought up by the baby boomers. We were brought up by the Depression, and there was just so much prosperity. There was so much growth. You heard these things like, you're lucky to have a job. Now there's a different, we're getting to the higher levels of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Do I need to explain Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Well, I've read about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right. No,
but you could definitely explain it.
Just very quickly, like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's basic need states that you have to, food, water, and if you don't meet those, you see it across the world. Those countries that have never gotten past that tribal or need state, they're still warring, and people drop down to that all the time. Like when you feel threatened, the first thing you do is fall into that. And if your basic need states aren't being met, then you can't keep going up the ladder to eventually like enlightenment and legacy. It's a triangle, and there's a lot of them, different examples, but that's the basic concepts of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And when we're threatened, and you see it happen all the time in any situation, whether it's in corporate or out, and entrepreneurs too, when you feel threatened, the first thing you do is you go to almost like a basic animal
fight
level.
Or flight. Yeah.
Fight or flight or freeze.
Freeze, yeah.
I tend to be a freezer. I'll like just, that's not odd, but like.
No, I love that. No, that's great. Fight or flight or freeze.
Yeah.
That's great.
But I am a freezer. Like I will stop and become so overwhelmed and paralyzed with fear. It doesn't always happen. I'm a big fighter too, but in certain instances where I'm feeling very overwhelmed that I freeze, it can be very paralyzing, can get very stuck. And so, working in that, it's just changed dramatically in corporate America and in general, like really figuring out like what's your natural tendencies when you're being confronted, because you're constantly confronted, and the pressures on. And I keep talking about corporate America, that tends to where I lean, but I also work with entrepreneurs. But when you're working in a situation where you're constantly under attack of like, so what's going to be your next offering? How are you getting this out? Are the clients happy? Did you meet this deadline? Your body is just constantly being assaulted. Your cortisol levels up. Like your lizard brain's going nuts, which like there's a lizard in my logo, which I can also explain later. But you're going back to that again, like you said, that fight, flight, or freeze, and you're just trying to figure out what's the way to survive. Yeah. And so many of us are living in that moment. And that was another pivotal change when I realized like I could feel it in my heart. And all of a sudden I'm like, this is why men drop dead in their 50s from not taking care of themselves and not taking care of like their emotional state as well. And fortunately, you're starting to see it more in conversations outside, but also in corporate America of like, we have to kind of take care of this whole being.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. The observation standpoint as well. Putting yourself from the perspective of you have lived this, but you've also observed it from other people as well. You can see the effects that it has on it. I love the fact you bring up the fact that it is old school, because from an old school perspective, yes, there's a change and a shift that should be happening, but there are still those that are dealing with it from the perspective of the old school format, where certain people should be seen and not heard opportunities, where there is a hierarchy where from almost parental in a way, where you don't do this, you don't act this way, you don't ask this question, you live it through the corporate America as well, and you deal with it from a personal perspective as well.
Yes, and that's one of the things that I work on with my clients is, when you look at, I think I started touching upon this, when you look at a situation, it's a partnership, it's a relationship. And whether you like it or not, when you go to work at a job, it's a relationship, it's a partnership, right. You're dating. And when you take a job or in a job, you're coming in, you're thinking like they're promising you something. And you need to be really aware of, like, are they fulfilling that promise? Is it a bait and switch? They told you one thing, you got in. That's happened to me several times where the situation just wasn't what it was. And it's just really important for you to look at your aspects. And there's a triangle that I do, which is fit, challenge, money, and security. When you're looking at your role, and you can use it whether you're in a corporate setting or in an entrepreneurial setting, like, is this the right fit for me? Because if the fit's off, like, you're not, whether it's like, I don't get along with you, you don't get along with me, it happens. Like, There's different personalities. Is a challenge right? Am I being invigorated by this? And also just understanding too, what do I want from this? Like, some people really feel like this is my my job, my day job, and then I have my life outside. I'm not one of those people, and I don't think that's where the world is going. Like, it's becoming, as I mentioned, I think more professionally blurred. And then there's money and security. And in those, hopefully you can hit all three, but you really need to you need to prioritize what those are going to be most important. Sometimes if the fit's more important, or the challenge happens a lot, right? Those that go into like acting. Like, the challenge is what I love, but I'm willing to give up on money and security for a while. Then hopefully that switches.
The artistic standpoint.
Yeah. So there's like all those different attributes that you need to be looking at and deciding for you. And I say this to my clients, like, some of my clients are like, I just want to quit. Great. Are you prepared for money and security not coming in? If you are, do you have savings set up? All those different things. Just many different questions to really understand what's most important. Sometimes it's just a lifestyle change, but also thinking about, can you stay in that situation, bring in a paycheck, and then figure out a different way to look at it.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of like when you get into that one phase, which I know we'll talk about the phases, but like, what do you own about this? Because again, in regards to the partnership of corporate America, you can only ultimately, and you've already touched upon this, change yourself.
Yeah.
You can't walk in, especially to big corporation, expect there's three parts to it. You, your boss, and the system. Yeah, you can be mad at your boss. The culture and the system can be working horribly for you. But the odds of you turning around, unless you're a CEO, and even CEOs fail at trying to turn around a big corporate system. I'm using it as a catch-all.
Well, there's always somebody higher that's going to say something about it. Yeah.
But like, that's like hundreds of thousands, or even if it's just hundreds of people, it's getting everyone on one page to move forward. Then you've got your boss, and like, there's really no incentive. The one person you can change is you. So going back to the example of like when I was confronted with, hey, you're on probation. Like, no, but I shifted. I told them I'm bringing someone in. I'm willing to change. And then actually the system started shifting around for me. And when I finally left that company, the CMO that I was working for called and said, she's a loss. And it's really how you look at it and what you let people, project onto you. And then how you also just own yourself and find that, I think Mama Gina has coined it, but like, this impenetrable spot, like, you can't touch this.
Right. Yeah, and if you're willing to give it out as well.
Just dated myself.
We're gonna take another quick break, and I love everything we have here. We're gonna come right back with the President Is. We're gonna have more from my friend Victoria Repka-Geller. A lot of powerful stuff. Power, I think, is a great word for it. Power. Yeah. We'll be right back. Hey, we're back with Victoria Repka-Geller here on The Present Is. And before the break, we were talking about the pivotal moment that you decided to incorporate this coaching program called LOAMlife into your life.
Yes.
Briefly explain to us what LOAMlife itself means, because it's such an intriguing word in itself, LOAM itself. But what does LOAMlife actually mean to you?
Well, LOAM actually stands for lipstick on a man.
Really?
Yeah. And,
okay.
And where that acronym comes from is when I mentioned all those years ago when I had that pivotal moment, I really had to look at my career, and I realized like I'd been giving this feedback of like, I'm too sensitive. I need to be more, sturdy, strong. There's a whole movement that's coming up right now about emotional quotient. And at that point though, when I started, really, you weren't supposed to be emotional. They really wanted me to be very masculine. They didn't really know how to deal with women as much in the workforce. And I just felt like I'm supposed to be a man and just put some lipstick on it. In fact, when I graduated from grad school, my career counselor had said, and this is like in 1998, he was like, do you want to have children? I'm like, sure. He goes, then why did you go to grad school? I mean, like, you'd think that was like in the 50s, but that was kind of the setting you were walking into, where they really were starting to see more educated women in it, but they really weren't geared to understand how women approach things, or that feminine energy, if you will. And they just wanted to be a man, be masculine, show up, do the job, leave. And as I mentioned, I really don't feel anymore that there's truly that separation of personal and professional, and that you truly need that like balance of like masculine and feminine energy that you bring in.
Okay.
So that's where that came from. Where it's evolved to, and I come from marketing, so it's surprising, like I only looked this up a couple years ago, is that LOAM actually stands for the most fertile soil you can grow in. And I had no idea.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great. So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, nothing, I don't believe in coincidences. Everything happens for a reason. So
Right.
of course I just happened to pick the word that means that. So when I share that with my clients, I mean, really I'm trying to create this fertile soil based on like, no pun intended, but the shit I've been through.
Fertilize it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To help them get where they want to go. I mean, I think that's what a lot of coaches want to do, or strategists. I call myself a career strategist because I really do feel like it's coaching, yes, but also strategy. How do I get where I want to go?
But not just them doing what you tell them to do.
No,
you get them to own it.
And that's a really important point. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people will work with coaches and it can be kind of a codependent behavior. It happens a lot when I work with people. They're like, wow, you're really rough. And I'm like, not a rough in a bad way, but I'm just going to be like, I want you to leave this being able to sustain this. Meaning, I find that when people work with, there's some coaches that are really about like kind of breaking you, and that's important.
Yeah, turn you down to build you back up. Yeah,
totally.
Yeah.
But then there aren't always those. There's not always that support system to truly build you back up, and that's a very tall order for anyone to truly do well. And so my goal really is like, okay, you've come to a place you really want change. Now I want to take you through my 5-step process to really get you where you want to go and give you tools that I've honed working in advertising and marketing for almost 2 decades. I mean, I know...
Influential. Highly influential.
And that's the thing, just to be very shallow on this, but to hit a point, in marketing and advertising, their whole goal is to sell to you. So they're very much into human insight. A lot of the most avant-garde thinking comes through a desire to sell you something.
Also that, but knowing fully well what the outcome, the result of it is, they want you to own something. So that's great. So you touched a little bit on, let's talk about the 5 pieces really quick. What are the 5 pieces they're going to get through the LOAMlife program?
So the program's really geared towards someone who's like, I'm ready for change, but I just don't know how to do it. So part of my logo is like, when you're ready to leave your tail behind.
Okay.
And I'm all about transformation. Like you've really decided you want change, you don't know how to do it, and like, how do you make it tangible? And there's a lot of studies that show that like somewhere between 3 and 5 steps are about as much as anyone can handle, because it can be overwhelming.
So you decided to go full gambit.
I was like,
go for the 5.
I don't do anything half-assed. So when you look at the 5 steps, they're geared towards like, you want change. You at least have to start there. Mm-hmm. And the first step is I am, and that I am is probably the 2 most powerful words someone can say about themselves, because it's defining.
Okay.
And if you're going around defining yourself as I am stupid, any of the voices in your, I can't do this. I mean, I know that's not truly an I am phrase, but like, I'm not capable.
Right.
Those words stick with you, and people don't realize that mindset. I really focus with people on like, what's your mindset throughout the entire process, and what are the mechanics, the tools to help you continue to move. And we're always moving forward, regardless if you don't feel it, and it's never truly a linear journey, but to really focus in on these 5 steps is that I am, how are you defining yourself? And I call them out on it. Do you realize, and I actually just did it with a client today, do you realize you use these words to describe yourself? And when reading them back to them, they were just shocked.
Right.
Which
it is great. It is great when they realize that.
So you recognize that, and recognition is the most important. Yeah. Recognizing you're doing something and then observing it, not judging it.
Perfect. From the I am, where do you go from there?
So from the I am, once you start really maybe hearing how you're describing yourself, and it can go the different direction too. You can be too much of a braggart, But regardless, you finally start really seeing like, who am I? Who do I want to be? How do I want to be perceived? Because perception is reality. Then you move into like, what do I own? It's I own step. And this is all on the path of transformation in your career and in life in general, because we spend so much time in our careers. 30% of our life is spent in our careers. It always impacts your life. So the next step of I own is you need to look at the situation, whether you're an entrepreneur, how are you surrounding yourself? Like, what's keeping you from moving forward. That tends to be people get into coaching or seeking help when they're not moving forward.
Okay.
So this part of it really focusing on like, what do you need to own? And then what do you need someone else to own? Meaning a lot of people come from it like either it's all your fault or it's all my fault.
Right, the defeating language.
Yeah, but it's very black and white. Like it's either somebody else's fault entirely and they take no ownership, or it's all my fault and they take all the ownership. And reality is, like, if there's two people involved, there is a partnership there and there's a role each one is playing to keep in that place. A lot of it can tend to be codependent behaviors, etc. But what do you own? I own, like, for example, at one of my roles in my career, they fired 3 people and were like, you're going to take on this job. So I had to own, I'm like, first of all, that's not what I really want to be taking on. But I had to own that I had created a situation where they felt that was okay because I had taken on a lot before.
Right.
So yes, I could have positioned that as, oh, they're being a horrible company, but they weren't. I had set up the expectation that I would take those things on.
Okay.
And that can really open up a whole new system of thinking of change.
Okay. From there.
For the third step is once you really like start defining yourself differently, then you start really like, what are you owning? So you become cognizant of it, not judging it, but really observing it. Then you can move on to the I will. And that I will section is all about an action plan. What will you do?
Okay.
That's where a lot of people get stuck. And they're very self-aware, but they're not going to take the effort. So in my program, we really focus on creating an action plan. Bite-sized action plan, because people can tend to get very overwhelmed. Like,
really?
What's going to be, yeah. Well, it stops a lot of people. Like, what am I going to, first, once you've got the recognition, oh, great, now what do I do? How do I change this? My particular focus is definitely on, like, how you change yourself in a corporate setting, whether it's relationships or how you position yourself or how you speak. And really understanding that so that you can like move forward and obtain what you want.
Okay, and then once you have the I will, then you move on to the next step, which is
I trust.
Okay.
So once you know what you're going to do, you're like, okay, I'm gonna create a new company. Great. Now you gotta trust this can happen. That's another place, like a big place where people shut down. Or I decided that I'm gonna ask for that raise. You've decided you're gonna do it. You've made all the steps. Now you gotta trust to actually do it.
Right.
Whether you're spiritual or not, whether the universe, God's going to be on your side, or that you need to trust that you can have that conversation, I'll be open to it. Or you need to trust that certain things will come to you to be able to move you forward. And a lot of people will make changes in that time frame of looking at who's in their world. Are they positive influences or not? Is the job a positive influence? You'll look at every single thing and only trust and bring in those things that actually bring you enjoyment, move you to the next level. Because that's where people shut down. If they make all these changes, then go back into an environment that's unhealthy or people that are unhealthy, it'll bring them back to behaviors that weren't working before.
Okay, so they have all those steps, and then the 5th step, you say it's basically the same as the first step, right?
It's called I Am 2.0. So
Okay.
You've gone through all these things, and like when my company, I really focus on is like leaving that story, or as like I have here, this tale behind. Actually, a client had made this for me, and it's very important.
Here, I'll help you with this.
Well, when you look at a tale, like it's beautiful looking. I actually on purpose didn't complete it because there is a Japanese philosophy that nothing's ever perfect.
Oh.
So I actually brought that in here, and our transitions, our transformations are never going to be perfect. So I've redefined myself. I'm looking at this tale, and it can be, oh, that old story. I'm not really ready. You're supposed to hold on to it.
Oh, sorry.
No, but I'm not ready to let that go. And you fight for it. You struggle. You keep going back. You're like, I'm sliding back. I'm either redefining myself, or I'm not owning this, or I'm not trusting. We go back and forth, and that's human nature. We don't need to knock ourselves for it. But at one point, you're like, you know what? That story may look good to me, but it's just not serving me anymore, and you'll get a better one. And eventually I have to make another tale that's even better looking than this. But the point being is that, it served a purpose at one point. It kept you stable. It kept you grounded. That's one of the reasons why most people have tales. We humans evolved to get balance. But at some point we look at it and go, it doesn't serve me anymore, I'm willing to move on, and you have a new tale that's grown, and it's I am, and you get to redefine yourself completely different and move forward.
Okay, but you also have the opportunity to take that I am and have it start off, like you were saying, to revisit the I own, the I will, the I
Oh,
trust,
totally.
and can keep on going with
It's a continuous cycle.
That's great.
That's what we, as human beings, are always striving in life. We can get stuck, but at some point, what you hear consistently when you work with clients is, I want some sort of change, and that I want to continue to evolve. And we're very fortunate, I feel, as human beings, that we've been able to create foundations for ourselves that are solid, that we can continue to evolve. A lot of people don't have that gift or opportunity, what I mean from their circumstances, to truly focus in on how am I interacting with others and my own personal development.
Okay.
It's a very self-full, not selfish, I think, self-full way to focus. And in the end, it benefits others. Because if you're happy, that energy will go back out to others
Right.
and back. And I always end my calls with this, that what I would like to have on my epitaph would be that in every word and deed and action, she left this world in a better place. Tangible things, material things, no one will ever remember those. But if I can be positive to you or someone else, and that can radiate towards someone else, then that makes true change. And I think that's where us as human beings globally need to start really moving towards, and dealing with that positive instead of focusing on the stress and stressing others out.
That's a great way to end it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And,
Yeah.
and sometimes the tail can be really comfortable too.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we hold on to them sometimes,
Yeah.
and I can give it back.
Well, thank you, Victoria.
No, thank you.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to come back, wrap everything up, and let you know how to get a hold of Victoria to help you create a new tale for yourself, right here on The Present Is. I want to thank, again, Victoria Repka-Geller for being on this episode with me on The Present Is. You can find out more about LOAMlife, the tale, and everything that she does with the tale by visiting her website, LOAMlife.com. You can also reach her through email, info@LOAMlife.com. Until next time, I just want to remind everybody out there that you're not alone with these experiences. You're not alone or not alone with these experiences. Whatever. Yeah. But it's so important to know that people are out there that have gone through similar experiences as you. Those that, have a tale and they want to leave it behind as an example for you. And also you have the opportunity to do the same thing. So reach out to those people. Reach out to myself through The Present Is. Reach out to Victoria through LOAMlife. But also remember, most importantly, you're not alone. Build off of it. One last thing, open your present, lay away your future, and donate your past. We'll see you next time on The Present Is.